What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Ken Jr. from Giving It a Try. So yesterday, if you saw on Instagram or on the Facebook page, I gave my body for science.
We only get one life. We only get one life. Let's live it up. We only get one life. We only get one life like this. We only get one life. We only get one life like this.
We're talking about V02 Max, lactate threshold, running efficiency, a couple key factors in your running and your training program that you may want some more insights in. So yesterday I had the opportunity. I was able to head down to Adelphi University on Long Island and take place with an actual laboratory testing, which was going to test for my max heart rate, my V02 max, my lactate threshold, running efficiency, and then take all those numbers from the science end of things in an actual lab setting and compare that to average individuals, average athletes, people your age group, your size, your weight, your ability, and kind of see where you stand. Now, as a runner to another fellow runner, I may ask you, do you even use zones? Do you understand zones? Do you understand what lactate threshold is? This is something as a beginner runner really is important, but just getting out there and starting to run is the most important part. Once you start getting to the more intermediate level of things, it becomes very important, and especially past that intermediate level of trying to improve fitness through plateaus, to be in the proper zones, know what your body's actually doing and what these zones actually mean. Just take that information and be able to train more efficiently, and you'll see later in the video we'll break it down a little bit on why that's so important. So you may have heard the term V02 Max before. If you have a watch like a Garmin like this, it kind of throws you this number out there, this V02 Max. That's basically the volume of oxygen that your body's using in a given duration of exercise. So it'll kind of estimate it through certain levels and things like that, but unless you go to a true laboratory setting to get specific data coming from the inside of your body, which I'll explain to you how that test was done and set up, you're not going to get the true exact numbers. And at the end of this, I have numbers that I've always used from Garmin and through my own testing protocols for myself and my athletes that I've used and set up. And we'll even see if they're close, remotely close, or even in the same ballpark as what the laboratory gave me at the end. Then we're talking about lactate threshold as well. That's going to be the amount of lactate that builds up in your body. And at some point through endurance, when you're getting higher intensities, your body's going to start to produce lactate more faster than it's able to flush and use. And then that's when you get to basically your point of maximal load, where you're not able to push any further because there's certain things inside your body that are limiting you due to your training and things like that, that you're not able to push past that point any further. And then you'll reach your maximal effort. The good part about lactate threshold and its values is it also gives you numbers that you can get up to just that point of your maximal load for lactate in your body. And if you're below that, you're able to maintain that pace for an extended period of time without over fatiguing yourself. If you go past that point in racing or training too frequently, that's when it leads to burnout, injury, or you're just not going to progress because you're not working in the right level or the right zones for yourself. Then we'll lastly talk about run efficiency. This is something you can do with a friend, with video, whatever it is. This is externally biomechanics of your running. You could have two runners, myself and another runner, who are the same age, the same weight, have had the same testing with our V02 Max and lactate threshold in the laboratory. So we could be carbon copies of each other, but we go out on race day and we want to run a 5K against each other, and one of us may have the slight advantage because of our run efficiency. That's our stride length, our stride count, how we move our arms, how we move our body. Are we landing on our heel and braking more as we're running, or are we landing on our forefoot? Do we have a forward lean? Do we not have a forward lean? So these are all things you'll be able to get by visually looking at yourself running, but it does make a difference. You could be the same exact carbon copy of somebody else internally and aerobically, but that person who runs that much more efficiently is going to have the slight edge and will probably win that event based off of the two. So why did I get this test done? For myself, I've been running now for about 5 years. I've been through some ups and downs with running and doing, but I've been very, very consistent with my training and the type of training I've been doing for the better part of 1.5 to 2 years now. I've gone into a different type of training system. It's the same system I use for the majority of the athletes that I help coach right now. If you want to look it up, I subscribe, is mostly that the 80-20 running. But there's more to it than just glossing over it and looking at the 80-20 concepts. I won't get into everything so much on it because there's just so many videos and information out there on some of these topics that I'm talking about. But I've been very consistent with how I'm training, how I structure, and how I race for about the last 2 years. I'm more of that middle to long course athlete right now, currently racing 70.3 distances. So a lot of half marathons. Last year I did Ironman and a marathon, so I was doing marathon running last year. And in the last 2 years I've also done 250Ks. And going forward after this season with a few 70.3s left, I plan on early next year running a 50-miler trail run sometime in May next year possibly. So I'm going to be staying at this endurance longer level. So it's great for me to know, especially going into this 50-miler possibly coming up and training through the winter, are the zones that I'm running in, my easy and moderate zones, where they're supposed to be, or am I pushing too hard in those zones? Am I going into that lactate threshold zone too much during training where it's really, you talk about that no pain, no gain philosophy. Well, I hate to break it to you, especially in running. If you do a lot of pain, you're not going to get a lot of gain. There's a space and a time to push, but it has to be done properly on the right days in the right amount to increase your aerobic level, your fitness level, and to progress and get faster in running. If you're interested in any of that and discussing, I'm always open for consults. I love talking to runners and talking about their history and where they're at, where they want to be, and their goals going forward. Just get in contact with me. We can set that up. I'd love to talk about it. But back on to where I'm at. So I thought having the opportunity to go do this test at this point was probably great. I'm probably at the most, what I feel, efficient level that I've been at in running. Pace-wise is the fastest I've been at. I've done some short course distances as well this year, 5Ks, 10Ks, and a half marathon, and I've PR'd all these distances up to this point. So I'm still progressing at a slow rate. It's kind of getting to a plateau point. So it was very good to see. I must have been doing the right things to this point, but to get past this next point and maybe peak as much as I can, what are some of the things I'm going to need to work on or look at or change, if anything? I don't know. Let's go find out in the laboratory is how this all came about. So there you have it. Going into this, I have an estimated, based off of testing protocols I do for myself and my athletes, what my lactate threshold is, where my zones are, my easy, my moderate, the zones I want to stay out of, my interval zones, my tempo zones, my race pace zones, all that based off of heart rate, based off of pace. I have a max heart rate value for myself. Garmin tells me my V02 Max. So I basically had all of this data, just not scientifically from a lab, already being enacted by myself. Good, again, to go down there and see from the doctor and the team down there, is all of this, within the same range? So I don't really recommend this test for an absolute beginner to running. There's just so much you can do and so many ways to improve just based off of simple concepts to get there. This is, again, I want to just reiterate, is for the person that's has the knowledge on what all this data means. They should know kind of where they're at with this data so they can go in there with some numbers and see if what they're doing is the right thing. Because you can get set on a similar journey or path by talking to a coach or a run coach and having them help you set up where you need to be. And then when you start to peak and plateau, you can then maybe take this to make it a step further and see if there's anything you can change. So let's talk about the test in general. I got in touch with Dr. Rob Otto over at Adelphi University at the Human Performance Laboratory a couple weeks ago. He discussed the whole thing, had me fill up some paperwork so he had an idea of where I was at, training-wise, racing-wise, what's going on, what type of athlete I am, where I may be at fitness level, and gave me a few guidelines for the test. It was going to be done on a treadmill. I'd be hooked up to a breathing apparatus. I'd be getting a finger prick every couple minutes to measure lactate threshold and lactate in my blood, and it would be a ramp test. So we would start at a certain point and go up incrementally until you reach failure. And if you know anything about me or you've trained with me, I'm very good at pacing. I'm very good at knowing where I need to be for my goals. And I've never really had to push that stop button, especially on a treadmill or something like that, on a real maximal effort test. So going into it, it was take a day rest. I know you have a busy schedule with racing, but try not to do anything the day before. So I did take a midweek rest day before going here. Showed up in the morning, go in there, you meet the staff. Simple. You're going for a run on a treadmill. So you'll warm up, just whatever your normal warm-up routine is. I did some dynamic movements, jumped on the treadmill for a few minutes, just at a light jog. Felt good, started to get the body core temperature warmed up. We discussed the recent 5K time that I had, so he knew basically what I was capable of sustaining for about a 20-minute interval. So we would start just under that at the test. They would bring me up to speed, and then they would reach that, and then every 2 minutes increase just a little bit more on the treadmill. I believe it was 0.5 miles per hour, and this would just be a ramp all the way up until the runner or the athlete that's there, the testing subject, says, no, I'm done, I can't go anymore. That's what they're looking for. And they're gonna know, because I'm gonna explain to you in the results how they know if you've reached your maximal effort. So after the warm-up, you'll get hooked up. If you saw in the picture, I had a device on. It kind of just sits on your head. You're breathing into a tube. I'm a mouth breather by nature. I just feel I always have a stuffy nose with allergies and that, so this was fine for me. Breathing out my mouth the whole time. They'll put a clamp on your nose. They want to have just flow in and out so they can measure your total oxygen consumption during this test, and then they'll ramp you up. And then when they start measuring the blood lactate, they'll give you a countdown. You'll jump onto the side of the treadmill, put your hand out. They're gonna prick your finger real quick, just like they're testing blood sugar, and they're gonna read that, and you jump right back on and keep going. That took about 5 seconds each time we did it. I forget how many times, it was 4 or 5 times had to do that. The only hiccup during the whole thing was you're on a treadmill, nice treadmill, it's kind of narrow and you can't see down because you have this apparatus on, so I'm looking forward, trying to keep a nice running posture, running gait, because I know they're looking at that too, so you want to kind of run as you would, out in the street. I have long legs. I kept kind of coming off the front of the treadmill a little bit, overstepping. I didn't want to look down with this breathing device on. I was trying to keep my eye forward. Unfortunately, towards one of the last stages, I whacked the emergency stop button on the treadmill, which they told you not to do. But after, when you're getting towards that 8 or 9 RPE on that scale of 10, that we're getting close, you get a little tunnel vision, you forget about everything else around you, and you're just trying to focus. They were able to turn the machine back on, get me going pretty quickly, and get some more data past that point, but that definitely kind of screwed up the mojo a little bit as the test was going. But it is what it is. They said they got the data. They said the test looked good. I executed it properly. Then they give you some time. Doctor goes in the other room. He prints out all your values. He goes over it, makes a nice report out, and then sits down with you and goes through everything from start to finish. So when you come back in the room, you'll get this report. I got a 4-page report. The first is a whole bunch of numbers they throw in front of you that looks like, I don't know, just a bunch of laboratory numbers, kind of like blood work. And then they break it down into, I got 3 pages of going through everything. V02 Max, explaining where I'm at, comparing myself, the lactate threshold test, what your max heart rate is, what your training zones are, and as well what your running efficiency is based off of other runners at your size, at your speed, and how you are based on your biomechanics. So real quick, the important thing that I want to talk about though is not specifically, hey, look what my numbers are, but my biggest thing and why I went there was the numbers that I have, which I use in my training Bible for myself, how do they compare to this test with much more sophisticated equipment and means of finding out these results? Real quick, we'll talk about it. Going into the test though, we were going off of a recent 5K in July, which was about a 1940 at the time. So that pace was 6:20. So they knew that I can hold a 6:20 pace for a period of time without, blowing up per se on the run. So they started me just before that. The test started at 8.5 miles per hour on the treadmill, which was about a 7:04 pace. Went up to 9, a 6:40 pace, 9.5, went to 10, which was 6, and then a 10.5, which is 5:43. My best mile that I've ever run was, I believe, a 5:50 during a short 2-mile race or 2.5-mile race. Definitely brought me what I saw pace-wise, which I couldn't tell on the treadmill again because they're just amping it up and you're looking forward. So just don't even look at the data while you're going, just try and give it your best effort. I was able to see right away there that I was reaching paces that I don't normally run at for any extended period of time. They gave you lactate by millimole, which is just a scientific way of what's in your blood, the levels and all that, but I really wasn't too concerned with that. What I was really concerned with is, what is my lactate threshold heart rate? At what point do I reach a certain heart rate and a certain pace where I'm pushing too hard and it's unsustainable at that? So after going through, and they went through it very well, every single piece of information, which you can tell on this piece of paper if you can see it, is a whole lot of numbers at a whole lot of different paces. They'll break it down for you. your maximal oxygen consumption on a treadmill, they'll give you your value. My value on my Garmin watch usually reads about 56. Maximal oxygen consumption that they plugged in on this was 53.4. So the actual consumption read a little lower, which, hey, that's fine by me. I had a max heart rate value off of my last 5K test of 174, and it was actually 174 on this test. They'll break it down for you here, which I thought this was pretty funny, is what your VO2 max average is based off of other types of athletes, and then the average 10-year age range. I fall into the 30 to 39 average age range. Various populations that take treadmill tests, the average 30 to 39-year-old male is, they rate at a 37 for their VO2. So again, VO2 max is the milliliters of oxygen consumed per kilogram of body weight per minute of exercise. So again, some big scientific thing that your Garmin watch is really not going to be able to figure out exactly. So I was okay with that difference in numbers. But just for instance, you may think, oh wow, that's a great number. They throw some other categories in here for you. Highly competitive triathletes, 65 they rate at. Olympic speed skaters, 75. Olympic cyclists, 73. And Olympic cross-country skiers rated the highest at 82 for VO2 max. So you may think I do okay, but there are definitely plenty of people in the population and athletes that get paid to play out there, as I like to say it, and that's why. Just remember, your maximal oxygen consumption is primarily dependent on genetic endowment. So I can thank my parents and my family for giving me those great genetics and why I'm not up there with the Olympic cyclists and runners and swimmers, but I'm okay with that. I'm doing pretty well for myself, and I think we're going to just, keep moving forward in the progress that we're making. It is feasible to elevate your VO2 max by 15 to 25% through training. And then they go on to say they gave me a rating of, based on my current performance, they can assume that I can still raise by potential my VO2 max by 3 to 7%. So I have not reached yet my maximal VO2 max that I am capable of genetically. So that was good to hear, to know that there still is room for improvement, and I'm not just kind of going to be, paddling upriver without an oar here. VO2 max, although good to have a number, does it really mean anything to yourself? Not really. It's great to have a number, know where you stand versus other people in the average, but that doesn't really change your training or anything like that. Your anaerobic threshold is a much more important value. Again, that's the threshold where once you go past that point, you're fatiguing your body too much, you can't sustain that effort. So to know where you are, especially at certain distances or certain races, to not push into that zone because you're going to burn yourself out and you're not going to be able to last at that pace, that's more important. They had me at anaerobic threshold on the treadmill occurred at 9.5 miles per hour at 163 beats per minute. If you look at what I had set, and so if you look, and again, I got to change that. So 9.5, you're looking at a 6:28-ish pace. So it's kind of right around where my 5K pace was. So my 5K is probably about maxed out right now for the type of training I'm doing because it's right there cresting at that threshold level. And 163 beats per minute, which, believe it or not, my lactate heart rate that I calculated for myself based on the testing protocols that I do was actually 162. And then I base all my zones off of that. So again, that number was almost spot on with what I've been using already. They go into your peak lactate level. Really not going to get into that here because there's nothing that can really change for you as the average athlete out there unless you're an elite and you're actually measuring these things, which you'll see some of the pros doing now. They're taking a lot of finger sticks during their training and registering what their lactate levels are. They'll give you what your lactate level is while you're running. The level that I had, it pops up. This means you have a good tolerance for lactate running. However, it can be improved. They know I'm doing 70.3 racing right now, and it's longer in distance racing, so it's not so imperative to have to change things right now. They break it down into some training zones and talk about training zones. Again, that's the same thing I do with myself and my athletes after we get your lactate heart rate based on the testing that we do. And then we put yourself in the zones, explain the zones, why those zones are important. And those zones did match. Even though I calculate them and show them differently than they do at the lab, they do match on what they determine is easy, moderate, and what is in that red zone for interval training. So all that kind of lined up just about right there to the heartbeat. And then we get into your efficiency evaluation. They'll measure stride frequency, stride length versus your leg length, then give you kind of a overall efficiency. They watch you, they see what you're doing, if you're heel striking, forefoot striking, forward lean, not having a forward lean, and just kind of discuss your efficiency. I won't bore you with my efficiency. I knew my efficiency for running going into this was good, not the best. I know I can improve on certain things, but you also need time to improve efficiency. You can't take all this, say I need more of a forefoot strike, more of a forward lean, and I need a higher cadence, and go out and implement all that tomorrow for all of your training runs. You need to take each specific run efficiency change and start to slowly implement them over training. So this is something you don't want to do right before a race, deep into a training plan, and you're only going to do them for a few minutes at a time when you're actually training, because you will have some discomfort, some muscles you haven't used that way in a while, and especially if you've been running for a while. If I went out and just started trying to strike on a different part of my foot tomorrow for the whole entire hour or 2 hour run, I'm probably going to hurt myself. So it's something you need to work on. And depending what your philosophy is, unless you're completely way off with efficiency and you're all over the place and you're falling far from the average, I think the best efficiency a runner has is the efficiency that the type of running or biomechanics that they're efficient at. So yes, there's a couple things that I know I can tweak, but I wouldn't want to change all of it because I'm doing well and staying healthy at the type of running efficiency and biomechanics that I use. So long story short with that, they give you an efficiency level based on high quality runners at the speed that you are running. So they basically said, if you took myself running at 9.5 miles per hour versus a very high quality runner with great running efficiency running right next to you at 9.5 miles per hour, I am 1.7% less efficient than that runner. That's fine by me. You're talking less than 2% difference in run efficiency based off somebody who has the same physiological makeup. I'll take it. If it was somewhere where it says you're 5 or 8% off, then you know you can definitely make big strides in that running efficiency. In the end, after I posted that yesterday, that's what I did, I knew I wanted to make this video. I kind of wanted to expedite this video to get the information out because I had a lot of people reach out to me about the test, that they've been interested in this test. They want to take one of these tests. What was the test like? What were your numbers? And I kind of had to just say, let me get my thoughts together. Let me get everything out there. Let me get as much information that may solve a lot of those questions out here at once. And then I can refer people to this. And then if there's any further questions, please, by all means, if you know me locally, reach out. You can always shoot me an email. Anything you want to talk about, if you've done this test before and want to kind of compare where you're at, or just talk about training in general, let me know. So I'm happy I did the test. I'm happy that it basically reaffirmed a lot of things that I already knew, but solidified those things. So you're not going out running week after week or training week after week and then kind of telling yourself, I hope I'm running at the right intensities. I hope my heart rate levels are where they're supposed to be. And this is why I frequently try and update athletes, especially if they're newer to the sport, because if you just start running and you sign up for races and you're training well, you're just naturally going to keep progressing fitness-wise and aerobically. So taking one of these tests doesn't really do anything, because a couple weeks from now you keep training, you're going to be better than that. You're going to increase your numbers. This is, again, for that person that's been training properly for a while and has kind of, you think you're about to reach your peak or your plateau, and can take this information and use it to your advantage and maybe break through that final plateau and really reach your peak. It's fun just talking to the doctor back and forth. He's very knowledgeable. He's been in the sport and the business for a very long time, has done tons and tons of these tests, seen so many different athletes. So be able to pick his brain was also kind of, invaluable at that rate. Again, any questions, reach out to me. I think I pretty much hit everything that I wanted to hit with this. Any questions though, as far as getting into running, type of running, contact a coach. Doesn't have to be me. I'm not saying come to me. I know everything. There's other coaches out there, tons of coaches that are doing the right training and things like that. But just remember that no pain, no gain philosophy will only get you so far. But if you push all the time with that philosophy, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to get hurt. You know, I pushed hard when I got into running and sports in general at the beginning, and I learned my lessons. That's why I'm doing this coaching thing now, to give back to the athletes that are starting so they have that better experience and can reach their potentials quicker. And if there's any questions as well, you can drop them down below. I'll respond to you as quick as I can down in the comments. Oh, and some of you are wondering, this test, they range in price, but they basically start around for a VO2 test on a treadmill. They actually have a bike there as well, so cyclists as well, if you're looking to do something like that. They have a very, very nice, expensive bicycle, computer set up in their laboratory to do the same thing for cycling. But it starts at about $200 for the test. The whole thing, I was there for probably just over 2 hours between them reading all the data, getting the data to me, and doing it on. Would I ever do it again? The possibility is there, depending where my training goes from here. If I make strides and improvements in my run times and training, it may be fun to go back, whether it's 6 months, a year, or whatever from now, after I've implemented some of these changes, and see if I'm able to manipulate these numbers a little bit and change. Again, thank you to the staff down at the Adelphi University Human Performance Laboratory. Thank you, Dr. Otto, for allowing me to come in there and have this done. And again, I hope you're out there. I hope you're training properly. Stay safe, stay healthy. Balance that life 1 mile at a time, and we'll see you on the next one.
We only get one life. We only get one life. Let's live it up. We only get one life. We only get one life like this. We only get one life. We only get one life like this.